No.
All right, we are live. Welcome to Life Unrehearsed.
Hi.
Everyone's saying hello. We got Mark Stolow and we've got Elie Haroun. Have we said that right? Elie Haroun?
That's correct.
Very good. We're talking caregiving on the first half. We've got Corrie, Sirota
I'm back.
back in studio. And we have hiding behind the scenes Suzanna Baum. Come show your face. We're going to talk about the fear of public speaking. We're going to be on in just a couple minutes. Hope you enjoy the show as you fall down.
That was a good save. Oh my goodness.
Let's see if we're still there.
That should look
I
great.
think one of your legs.
Yeah, it's
Oh.
That was the
One
first
of your
lesson
legs
in
is wobbly.
fears of public speaking. What to do when something goes wrong.
What to do when your tripod falls
All
down.
right, here we go. Can you hear anything on the phone? There we go. Ready?
I got my you got your cards? You got your cards.
I got my cards.
Meanwhile, two of Hollywood's biggest names couldn't make the Suburbicon work at the box office. Directed by George Clooney and starring Matt Damon, Suburbicon came in at number 9, earning just $1.8 million in one of the worst wide-release debuts in recent years. I'm Ben Thomas. Well, Sports Sold this afternoon, the biggest release prospect of Martin Lowey following a neutral visa.
Oh, you got the headphones on.
Yeah, it's not easier.
Send pics and photos to your story at cjad.com. From the Donegal Weather Center, rainfall and wind warnings are...
Rain.
Yeah.
This is not good for my hair.
I hear you.
No, you don't have bad hair day. It's so great. You're so lucky.
We're bald brothers.
Gusty winds up to 90 by afternoon, high 15, temperature falling to 8 in the afternoon. Now in Montreal is 11 degrees. I'm Richard. Next update at 4:30. Breaking news as it happens. News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
Commercials. Gotta vote. Good afternoon on a soggy Sunday. Welcome to Life Unrehearsed. This is a show about the ins and outs of family life. It might be about your parents, maybe yourselves, or even the kids. We're here to discuss these topics, and we're going to navigate you through it all. My name is Matt Vecchio. I specialize in free retirement home search and senior transition support. And I'm here with my new co-host, Corrie Sirota, clinical social worker and psychotherapist specializing in grief and loss. Now, coming right up, are you a caregiver? Are you taking care of a loved one, maybe a spouse, a parent, a disabled or special needs child? Maybe you might be thinking you will be a caregiver one day. Well, you're not alone. Believe it or not, there's about 8 million Canadians that are caregivers. That's 28% of the population. It's amazing and not an easy job. Most likely you didn't ask for it. Very often you didn't have any formal training and you were thrown into it. Well, we've got some help for you, and we're very, very excited to have the president and CEO of the Caregiver Network that will be joining us soon, and we also have a special guest that will be joining us in the first segment. But first, Corrie's back from Chicago and in studio. How are you?
I am really good. It's great to be back. I did come back from Chicago learning lots of stuff from the National Bereavement Conference, and I also came back with a new voice.
I was going to say, did you get coached by Demi Moore or anything? You got the Demi Moore sexy voice going on for us.
I'm thinking Demi Moore or Roger Moore. I don't know which one it is. But it is what it is, and I'm glad to be here, especially this week. Matt, we got to ask you, Halloween's coming up. What are you going to be?
Oh, God, we always get stressed for costumes, you know, but my wife and I are probably going to go as Sonny and Cher. This is what we're going to be talking. Oh, look at this. We got a little music. I got you, babe. Look at Dave on Master Control. He's got it under control with little Sonny and Cher. Yeah, you know what? My comparison is I got his height. That's about it. You know, someone argue his nose, but that's it.
I was going to ask you, are you Sonny or Cher?
Not definitely sunny, definitely sunny. But you know what the real costume is this weekend? We had my dad's 75th birthday, in fact, and we dressed our 7-month-old puppy Great Dane, who is 85 pounds now, and we put this puppet cowboy around his body. And he just ran around the front yard with this poor little cowboy hanging on for dear life. So we videotaped that, and it was something else. Now, that was probably the best costume we've seen so far.
Oh, you know what? I would really love to see that. Can you please post that on our Life Unrehearsed Facebook page? I got to see that.
You know, that's a that's a very good idea. Okay, after the show, we'll post that. It is pretty funny. A great show, as I mentioned, on the first half. Corrie, what do we have going on in the second half?
Well, on the second half, we are going to look at the concept of glossophobia. I don't know if anybody knows what that is. I certainly did not. It's actually the fear of public speaking. And clearly, you and Matt, we don't suffer from it. However, there are at least 75% of people suffer from or experience this fear of public speaking. So we have an amazing in-house guest, Suzanna Baum, who's a public speaking trainer, coach, and keynote speaker, and she's going to talk about all about it and tell us how we can perhaps even overcome some of it. No pressure though.
No, that will be very interesting. Looking forward to have Suzanna on the show. Now, let's get right into it. Our first guest, and I will say guest, is Mark Stolow. He's the president and CEO of the Caregiver Network and an amazing caregiver support community called Huddol. We also have our special guest, Elie Haroun. Is that right, Elie?
Correct.
Get that right. He will be joining us just after traffic, talking about how personal story he has and how he can help from a caregiver perspective. So we're very much looking forward to you. So Mark and Elie, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Mark, I talked about the Caregiver Network. Maybe just could you explain what is the Caregiver Network?
Yeah, the Caregiver Network's been around since 2004, and we do distance learning for family caregivers. So we give them access to training and support through web-based learning, and we've been doing that for the last 13 years. And the next big innovation in our work, as you mentioned, is Huddol, Huddol.com, spelled Huddol, a little bit of a unique spelling, so if people want to check out Huddol.com, they can. And that's like an entirely new innovation in how we're supporting caregivers through virtual communities by bringing them together and also connecting them to a whole network of experts.
Okay. So I understand that this week coming up is Caregiver Week in Quebec.
November 5th to 12th in Quebec is Caregivers Week. So it's a week about recognizing and honoring, as Matt was saying, your listeners, people out there who are caring for a family member who's not well, and that could be a spouse, it could be an aging parent, it could be a child. And it's really about honoring and recognizing the fact that these caregivers do so much to support our healthcare system, do so much day to day to make sure that their family members are well, supported, safe, and it's just an enormous job. I mean, it's day-to-day care, it's supervision, it's coordinating care, it's ensuring that their nutritional needs are met. It's massive, and it's a growing phenomenon.
It's my numbers are mind-boggling too.
Yeah.
It's 1 in 4 homes, I think, in
Quebec. Yeah.
And just the fact that we're even here on air talking about it is part of what we need to achieve in terms of recognizing the important role of caregivers, because a lot of the time they didn't ask for it, and they're doing the best they can. They're winging it, and if we can give a bit of a formal knowledge and education, which is what I think you're trying to achieve here, aren't you?
Yeah, we're trying to make sure that caregivers are supported in this process. I mean, Elie will talk a bit later about what his experience was like as a caregiver. I've been a caregiver. I rarely meet anyone who hasn't been a caregiver, and what they can tell you is this is tough. It's tough to watch a family member go through an experience of suffering. It's tough to understand what to do about it. It's tough to access the healthcare system, which is bogged down and complicated. So how do we, through Huddol, make sure that they get access to a network of support when and where they need it? No wait times, not waiting around, a trusted, safe space where I can talk to people who are either in a situation like me and learn with them, or just talk to experts. Like if I want to talk to Matt about, understanding how to get into long-term care support, I can connect with Matt on Huddol, or other specialists like Corrie if I want to talk about end-of-life care. So that's really the power of Huddle, is it's this instant access to this brain trust, this big brain trust of people who know about caregiving.
It's so interesting to me to listen to this and to listen to this new. I didn't even know, I mentioned to you earlier off air that I'm actually a member of the Caregiving Network and didn't realize and make the connection.
It's very new. Huddle's very new. I mean, it's, we launched Huddle mid-September. We already have over 1,000 caregivers in the community, about 250 professionals in the community, and it's growing rapidly day to day. And we expect, even within a few months, we'll have probably close to about 25,000 members on the platform.
That's incredible.
It's a huge need. There's no question that you have people listening today who, just with our own words, are starting to see themselves as caregivers and are realizing, yeah, it would be really helpful for me to have a helping hand, or to really better understand why mom behaves that way, or how do I help my son, or even my grandchild who's dealing with a really difficult health problem.
I think you're changing it from being on an island and letting people know you're not alone. Now, this is Life Unrehearsed. You're listening to Mark Stolow, President and CEO of the Caregiver Network in Huddle. We'll soon be talking with Elie Haroun about his personal caregiving experience, and he has also a couple of little side stories, because we have a little mini recording artist star on our hands too that just come to find out about it. And speaking of Elie, I think you were a caregiver for your father that I know it touched you personally, and you've been able to take that caregiving experience, I believe, now becoming a spokesperson, and one of the reasons why you're here today, and good for you for letting people know about this experience, and if anyone can learn about your experiences as you've gone through this, I guess, the trials and tribulations of caregiving. So hats off to you. So we're going to hear a little bit more about Elie's story and continue our discussion on caregiving, but first we're going to head to the CJD Traffic Center for a traffic update. Okay, I had to stretch that out a little,
Yeah,
but
I didn't know if
well
I should
done.
jump in or not. I hate interrupting, but
no, that's okay. I mean,
Yeah.
if you see that there's fine, but that was okay, because it was fine. All right, so we got about 4 minutes. We threw out a teaser question there. We're just going to ask you to tell your story. Is there anything specific, after you tell your story, that you would want us to focus in a little bit? And if we can get some of this recording artist part in there as well,
Bring in some of the fame.
I hesitate to do that. I mean, I know that it's part of what we need to do. I don't want to focus too much on it.
We could lead that. We'll throw
I'll
a
let
couple
you do that.
Right.
I think like you said, I think the story will be probably sufficient in what I need to communicate, because ultimately my interest, which is probably not the perfect context right now to speak about it, because we just launched Huddle. The reason why I'm particularly interested in this is that over the long term, like I spoke to Mark, maybe this is one of the various tools that can be used to start changing policy at the provincial and federal level.
Okay, so just on
I
that
don't want
point,
to dive
It's
too
too
much.
early
It's
in
a big
the
topic
game
for us
for
to do.
that, but
what I think we could do is, I'm going to be leading into, I'll ask you your personal story. That could open the door, Corrie, for you to say, why are you involved then in Huddle, as a secondary question.
Sure.
That will be...
I think the other thing that we could do as well is try to give an example of where someone like Elie could have benefited from Huddle at that
Exactly.
time. I think it's
It's
interesting
in that
to,
sense, yeah.
Right.
That's
I mean, 4 minutes, yeah.
Because I would have liked-
We'll struggle
I would-
to get into an advocacy.
I would have liked my mother to have the support that
Right.
I believe that all long-term caregivers
Okay, so you know what, that's
should
really
get.
good. So you're okay with that then?
So you're going to tell your story, and then I'm going to ask you why
Sure.
Huddle? Why are you involved in that?
And then that's where you get into that.
I
And
can-
then,
Because it's the cat's meow is the answer. Come on.
now we have...
The caregiver's meow.
We're going to have about 9 to 10 minutes, about 9 minutes. So, there's going to be a few more questions.
Okay.
And then we can get into some general questions we have.
I
and
had
then
some general questions.
we
on
just,
that.
we just
I
go with
told
it.
Whatever you guys
remember
want.
them,
And then around 4:29ish, we're going to start wrapping up.
Throw something at me to remind me.
And then I'll do
Yes,
traffic
yes.
after? I'm
Yeah, sure. You're a pro
I
now
like-
already.
I mean, I basically drive in traffic.
Yeah.
So
I'd like to say that since my dad passed away, if you want to maybe, make a link, is that now he's my manager from above.
Ah,
That's how I see my dad now.
Yeah, but that's
He's my
excellent.
manager.
That's cool. That's cool.
Do you hear the in and out of the? I heard my. They were on. They were off.
Who?
Sound.
Yeah, you mean Mark? Yeah,
I was switching my head.
yeah. He's,
No, but also even here, at one point, I don't know if they were saying that. I don't know what's going
the
on.
reason why was because when Ed Mark had turned here, it goes off in your on your earphones. So that's why I was kept speaking to the mic.
Oh.
Right.
Yeah, because when he turned his
Yeah,
head,
it'll affect the stereo
Yeah.
signal.
there you go. See?
You're not going to see me. I'm not even going to look that.
So don't forget the on. I get it.
That is.
We have a little music too. Little Michael Jackson. Corrie picked that one. I think that was a good choice. I'll be there. Welcome back to Life Unrehearsed. My name is Matt Del Vecchio. I'm here with Corrie Sirota, and we're very, very privileged to have Mark Stolow, President and CEO of the Caregiver Network, and also an amazing caregiver support community called Huddol, which we're going to hear a little bit more about. And we're also very honored to have Elie Haroun, who I talked about just before traffic. And Elie, we're going to throw it over into your court. This is very dear to your heart, and tell us about your caregiving experience with your dad.
Well, it was really my mother's caregiving experience with my father. I was the auxiliary to my mother. She became the de facto nurse for my father, who had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in May 5th, I remember, of 2010, and he passed almost to the day 6 months later. The last, I would say, 3 months were the critical months where there was no autonomy left. My mom had to really take over all the roles, feeding, cleaning, administering, medication, you name it. She had to essentially stop working. She couldn't afford to continue work and be absent because there was nobody to do what needed to be done at home. And so in order to help my mom, I also moved in partially to my parents' house. I would stay there more or less 5 days a week, 5 nights a week. And I would stay with my mom, and whenever something needed to be done, at least I would be there. And I also had to stop. I also had to basically stop working mostly. I had to turn down a lot of gigs, and so for a certain period of time, it was financially rough for both my mother and I. I'm an autonomous worker, so obviously, I'm my own boss, so I create my own work. So there's always that pressure, and I can't even imagine what the pressure was for my mother. So
Very overwhelming to
Very overwhelming.
that experience, and I can't even imagine how much time and how painful it is. I know from the work I do, watching someone you love slowly change, and that's been my experience. And I facilitate support groups for caregivers, and this is why this has been so interesting to me, to actually meet face to face with Mark and hear what you have created. So I understand you're involved in how what do you see as your connection? Why?
Well, my connection is very recent. I met Mark through the fact. Well, I had translated something for Huddle, then I narrated that text for Huddle, and then I told him that I was so interested in, I was so touched by the cause that I decided, if you need a spokesperson, I'm more than interested, because my story is not unique at all. There's so many Canadians just like Mark and myself who have more or less the same story. So my interest is to have people discover this tool that can be so useful in managing the stress that they feel as caregivers. And the strength of it is its instantaneous ability to help. As Mark said, you don't have to wait. It's at your fingertips. You can get help in various forms at your fingertips, and I think that's the strength of Huddle, and I think that's why it attracts me. And I think it also it speaks to the fact that there are things that need to be improved in terms of when it comes to policy, government, when it comes to caregivers. So Huddle is one way to get there, I think.
You're listening to Life Unrehearsed. Matt Del Vecchio here with Corrie Sirota. That was Elie Haroun talking about his caregiving experience and also talking about Huddle. We are with the president and CEO of Huddle, Mark Stolow, as well. amazing story to hear what you've gone through. Also, I think what you brought up about your mom, very, very relevant, because it's not just one caregiver very
No.
often. It affects entire families.
Yeah.
If I were to ask you, Elie, based on your experience, and what can you recommend throughout this journey that you would say to someone that is about to begin this journey?
Wow, that's a loaded
It's a big
question.
one.
I personally, very, very personally, myself, I think meditation has been the saving grace for me. I've practiced meditation for a very, very long time, a number of years, about 14 years more or less. My mother doesn't. She hasn't taken that up, and I'm sure that had she had that tool, it would have probably helped her a lot. Had she had tools like Huddol to know, for example, when my father started taking stronger doses of I think it's called Dilodil, that derivative of morphine, it's very, very strong. He started getting acute dementia. Had we had at the time some tool like Huddle, we could have looked it up and talked to medical specialists and see that the dementia is medically related, like it's medication related. There was a point where my father he didn't recognize me anymore. He didn't know that I was his son, and he would and that was very traumatizing. So if I had those tools, I would have. It took weeks for the doctor to come to our house, the palliative doctor, to come to our house and finally say, "Don't worry, that's the medication talking."
Elie, because Elie gives two really good examples. So, for example, had Elie and his mom come to Huddle, we have Alzheimer's support communities on Huddle. We have a community dedicated to talking about mindfulness and how to use meditative practice to ease stress and suffering. So we're trying to really build a really well-rounded ecosystem so people like Elie or your listeners can come into an environment and really just get access to a range of help and things that are going to provide practical solutions to help them navigate the experience.
So this experience, from my experience in working with caregivers, I've seen a lot of different emotions come out and be expressed. So everything from anger and sadness, of course, to tremendous guilt. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, caregiving is the purest form of life unrehearsed because no one prepares you for this. And we all have these hopes and dreams about what our life is going to look like, and then someone gets sick, and it turns things inside out. And that experience of turning things inside out also turns caregivers in on themselves. The shame, the embarrassment, the feeling of hopelessness that comes with watching a family member who's experiencing Alzheimer's or end-stage cancer or a child with autism. What do you do with all that feeling of that sense of hopelessness? And it can create feelings of depression and anxiety. And one of the things that we say with Huddle is let's break that isolation. People moving through this experience alone, self-enclosed on themselves, that contraction they experience, it makes the journey that much more difficult, that much more overwhelming. What better thing to do than to connect with other people in the community and say, hey, I know what you're going through. I get it.
That was Mark Stolow on Life Unrehearsed, and what a topic for Life Unrehearsed it really is, the whole caregiving and navigating through this difficult time. We're going to talk a little bit more about Huddle. I think a lot of us want to know how we could find out about Huddle. But first, Elie, we got to talk. What you said off here. You have a manager, and for those that don't know Elie, he was on the French equivalent of The Voice called La Voix.
Correct.
And congratulations for that. And you were saying you have a pretty good manager behind you.
Yeah, it's my dad. So he left this plane of existence to go on to another one, and so he manages my career from atop.
Excellent.
That's
Excellent.
right.
Now about Huddle. Okay, we've explained it a little bit, and
Yeah.
it is in its infancy. It is an amazing community. Mark, can you give the vision as to where you want to bring Huddle?
Yeah, so, people go to huddle.com, can come on, and first of all, people have to know it's a safe, trusted space, so they can come on anonymously. So people who are worried about talking about their dad with Alzheimer's, it's really important that people know that it's a safe, secure space. The future of Huddle is how do we build the largest caregiver support community in this country? And we're well on our way. To your earlier point, there are 8 million Canadians, and that number is low. We know it's much, much higher. So how do we take these people who are wandering the wilderness of care by themselves and bring them together in one powerful change-making space? That's the big vision for Huddle. But it takes a network of professionals and caregivers coming together and saying, hey, together we can make this better. That's why Huddle we say care better together, because it really is about caring, doing it together.
So can you remind me again, what is someone who would go on to Huddle, what would they see or
Yeah,
get? Or
it's a
what
good
is it?
question. I mean, Huddle really works simply. At huddle.com, you come in, you start just sharing with us basic information about your care experience. And then what we do is we start smart matching a community to your needs. So we start introducing you to people like you, your peers. Then we introduce you to healthcare experts who can support you. Then we introduce you to our care communities, whether it's a mindfulness community, an Alzheimer community. So we do a lot of the work for you, matching you to the right network of support. The goal is to try to bring those people to your doorstep and say, hey, this community is here for you.
You know, we just got a text in, and I think this summarizes it nicely, because this was a caregiver, a woman who was going through this process in the 90s and just felt she had no support whatsoever. And to this day, she has difficulty functioning with depression about what had happened. And this is why this is so inspirational, Mark and Elie, for you guys to be here with us, to tell us that there is a lot of hope and inspiration and knowledge that will become even greater in the months to come. Very, very exciting time.
So we really do appreciate you, both of you, Mark and Elie, coming on the show. And can you repeat one more time how to get in touch with you or Huddle?
Yeah, so Huddle is HUDDOL.com. Elie is actually on Huddle. More and more, we're bringing you into the mix on Huddle.
That's right.
So you can also meet Elie on Huddle among the other
Oh,
caregivers that we have there, which is great. So yeah, that's what you do. Just go to huddle.com.
Thank you for that. Coming up, we will be discussing with Suzanna Baum why 3/4 of our population have a fear of public speaking and what they can do to help themselves. Now let's head to the CJAD newsroom.
Hey, you did it! That was their first out to news. Guys, excellent. Really powerful. Really powerful.
No problem.
Guys, fantastic. Elie, hats off to you.
Thank
Hey,
you.
for just having the guts to come on and
No,
tell your
no
story. You know, I
problem.
think it benefits a lot.
It's my pleasure.
Please.
All the best. Good luck.
Mark and Elie, just
Yes.
So I'll get it from that.
Yes.
pop in over here. Say
Yeah,
goodbye to
okay.
Facebook, will you? Okay, right over here. Thank you, guys. Say goodbye.
Bye!
Next up, Suzanna, about the fear of public speaking.
Great to meet you, man.
Hey, thanks. Hey, guys. Great job.
Bye-bye.
Pull hard.
Nice meeting you.
Bye.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye.
All right, guys. So you just hit that green button, okay, Mark?
Do I put this on? Yeah, I think you can.
I don't know.
You hear, it's when we take callers, although we have putting out
Madrid responded by using
Yeah. I mean, you can wear them. We won't need them.
Okay.
The main thing to remember is just talking into the mic. And say hi to Facebook Live again. We got
Hi,
Suzanna
Facebook
coming in. We'll be on in just a few more minutes.
Okay.
Very good. Hey, great job. Way to go. Good out. Yeah. And now,
I cannot imagine navigating the text and the phone calls as well.
these are very loud. I gotta take that. Where the noise is. There we go.
That was great. So those guys were it's
Yeah.
very mesmerizing.
Yeah.
You know?
They're really, really good.
Yeah. What an important
Service, it's
thing.
amazing
My
what they're
goodness.
doing.
Yeah.
What is the website that you were just discussing? Huddle. I think it's huddle.com.
Yeah.
Is that what they said?
Yeah.
Okay. So at one point during our session, in fact, I'm going to tackle it right away.
Former caregivers. You've got to go onto the site and ask.
Those texts.
Yeah.
So you know what? I'm going to I'll mention it huddle.com, and
Yeah.
I think
Oh,
that
you're coming back? You
yeah.
come, okay, so when you come back, we can go right out of the gate.
Next update
Yeah.
at 5 o'clock. Breaking news.
So I'm going to open up, Susanna, and then Corrie's taken over with the intro.
I will say thanks for being here. You'll win, and then I will come up with a question.
We're going to do a little banter back and forth.
And one thing I'm not sure about is when to do resets. I'm not sure when to do resets.
I'll do the resets.
You'll do the resets?
No problem. She is good because she wants to
Go
do
get her.
something. If you feel
awesome.
comfortable and you want to do a reset, after 2 questions. So if you feel it's gone on a little bit, then go for it. So
I'm
Suzanna
going to
Baum.
do the introduction. By the way, 2017 president of Canadian Association of Professional Speakers, Montreal chapter, I should say that.
Yeah.
And
And
member of
2018
Global,
also.
and
2018.
member of Global Speakers Federation.
Yeah.
Yes, that's okay.
Yeah.
If I don't do it, you'll do it.
The reset.
Yeah,
I'll
because
watch
I'm
you.
going to ask a question. That's why I need you to do this, and then I would do it. I made him cue cards.
We're going to have a little musical introduction. Two, in fact. One after the news and one after traffic.
Yeah, wait till you see the songs I picked.
Okay.
Fine. I picked songs that, that's the
Yeah.
funnest part of this. You know, next week you have to do physical. Let's get physical for friends. That's like a given. It's a foregone conclusion.
She's a good friend of yours, eh?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
No,
That's okay.
and I've
Here from
remembered
yours.
all falls in love. It goes so fast. But you have so much to say. I love everything. We're just going to have to have this again.
Can you just see
Yes.
an idea?
Yeah. Fear. Why are people so afraid?
Oh, okay.
That's actually good for me to,
Okay.
Okay. And you know, we will end with how to get people to get in touch with you. I will
Okay.
ask that question so that people know.
Okay.
And
Here we go. Oh no. It's just a Corrie.
No.
It was just
Psych.
it was the Alavita commercial.
oh,
There wasn't
that's what I heard when you were run downstairs. I'm here alone. Guests didn't show up, and I hear that, and I'm like, "Are you kidding me?"
Oh, you did it, but you did it on your own, right?
No, he came in.
Oh, you came in.
So don't forget you're on button, but only during the music.
Sorry.
Only during the music.
Oh,
They're going to do
during the
the
music.
intro,
Yeah,
then the
okay.
music. So because once you go on air, then you can't hear any of us for
Okay.
Facebook Live.
Oh, really? Hold on. This you wait.
Once you hit the
Yeah.
button, we're live everywhere.
Okay.
It goes so quick. Look, we're already 4:36 almost.
Yeah.
So
So
it's
when did you say we're finishing? Or?
4:45. So at around 4:44, you're going to see us
Okay.
wanting to wrap it up, and then at break we'll talk about 4:56. Here we go.
Showtime.
Little Animal House days as we talk about an upcoming segment on public speaking.
Yeah.
My name is Matt Del Vecchio. I'm here with Corrie Sirota. This is Life Unrehearsed. I'm a certified professional consultant on aging and owner of Lianis Services, free retirement, home search, and senior transition support. And Corrie is a clinical social worker and psychotherapist specializing in grief and loss. It's amazing, Corrie. The texts haven't stopped since that last segment. So we just want to, again, give the website and the spelling of Huddol. You can go on huddol.com, HUDDOL.com. An amazing community, and we encourage you if you need some assistance for caregiving, advice, and support. So, were you an Animal House fan there, Miss Demi Moore voice?
Does it ever bring back memories? Some of which I cannot share on the radio.
We want the show to continue, Corey.
That's right. That's right. Well, anyways, it does bring back when you hear those songs, and I love when I'm going actually after today. I have a bat mitzvah to go to, and inevitably
You'll be hearing
that
it.
song is going to come on, and people are going to they don't no holds barred. It's fun. Sometimes it's fun to let loose like that.
That's right. You got it.
So I have to say that in preparing for today for our session, I looked online and I was, of course, astounded to see the number of people that experience this fear, this phobia of public speaking. In fact, what I saw online was that people fear public speaking greater than they feared death. And that to me was like, wait a second, think about that for a minute. People would rather be in the casket than give the eulogy? What? Anyway, so here to talk about that today, we are very fortunate to have Suzanna Baum, who's a public speaking trainer, coach, and keynote speaker. And she's going to talk to us about the whole concept of public speaking overall. I also want to mention that she is the 2017 and 2018 president of the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers, the Montreal chapter, and she's also a member of the Global Speakers Federation. So thanks so much, Suzanna, for joining us on the show.
Thanks, Corrie.
Thank you, Suzanna.
Thank you.
So first and foremost, let's get this question out. Why are people afraid of public speaking?
You know, when you get in front of a room of people, it could go either really well or it can go really, really badly. And unfortunately, most of us tend to feel like it's going to go really, really badly in terms of looking stupid, in terms of being judged by the group, in terms of the effect on your reputation. People are just really afraid of making the mistakes and it being kind of a career-limiting move. And it's a very vulnerable place to put yourself in. So it does, it's easier to avoid it in so many cases than to go out and put yourself at risk like that.
You know, it's so true. And, you know, myself personally, I do a lot of public speaking, a lot of presentations. This Wednesday, I'm at the YMCA doing a presentation with my wife on seniors and downsizing. And the following week, I've got a very big presentation at Selection West Island. And I do this quite regularly, but I have to say, Suzanna, you still get the nerves, you still get the butterflies before every presentation. Help me out. What can I do to bring the nerves back down, and what can anyone do to do that?
Okay, the first thing is, I think it's a myth. A lot of people come to me and they say, you know, as soon as I will feel more confident, or Suzanna, teach me to be more confident, then I'll be able to be a better speaker. But in fact, that's kind of a myth, because just as you're saying, you may always be nervous. And that's totally okay. I mean, the nerves may change depending on what you're talking about, who's in your audience, how large is your audience. So you have to prepare to have the nerves, and then prepare yourself to, what do you need to do to alleviate the jitters so that you can still go up in front of your audience and present what you need to present, say what you need to say in the way that is most relevant to them.
That's really very, very sound advice. You're listening to Life Unrehearsed. I'm Corrie Sirota with my co-host Matt Vecchio, and we're talking to Suzanna Baum. Suzanna, speaking about myths, that you hear it, I've heard it so many times, you know, start with a joke, picture your audience naked, don't memorize, etc., etc. I'm sure you've heard them all.
I've heard them all.
Can you please talk about those?
Well, just as you said, very often the most common ones that I hear are start with a joke. Should I picture the audience naked? You should never memorize or rehearse your speech too much because you'll be too robotic. Let your notes go and speak from the heart. And like I said before, if only I could feel confident, then I would be a good speaker. And then this final myth that really kind of kills me is that those people who feel that they are confident and therefore they don't need any help giving a presentation. And the fact is, it's not necessarily about how you feel as a speaker. That's not the most important part about public speaking. The most important part is how you reach the audience. Is the message you are giving them relevant? Is it meaningful to them? And what kind of value are you delivering to the audience? Because it really should be all about them and not about you. So feeling that your confidence is the most important thing, or your lack of confidence is the most important thing, is actually one of the biggest myths of all.
Quite interesting. You know, I've heard that there are many other factors going back to the nerves and why people are afraid of it, but there are steps you can take in actually giving the presentation, and the benefit would be you're less nervous. For example, I've heard, you know, breathing is important, proper preparation. What are some of the important presentation skills that we should absolutely do, which will also help take away the fear?
Well, the first thing you need to do is really understand who you are speaking to. So who's going to be in that audience, and what do they need to hear? What is the benefit to them about the message that you're giving? So really that's the first step. And, you know, I tend to sort of break this in two, is what do you need to do to prepare yourself? And in terms of that, you know, it's preparation of the message, it's analyzing the audience, it's practicing, it's audio, recording yourself, and then listening back so that you could hear yourself the way an audience would hear you. And then there's the mindset shift, the mindset shift, and changing or reframing the way you are approaching the presentation so that you're focusing a little bit less on yourself and again more on what the audience needs to hear and how can you deliver the most value to the audience. And when you create a speech and create a real structure to the speech and create this level of engagement that is very targeted towards them, that in effect will help you manage your nerves, because now you're stepping out in front of an audience with something that you know is engaging and relevant to them, rather than just throwing things up against a wall and hoping it sticks.
It makes a lot of sense, and the more you're prepared, I guess the less nervous you are as well. Is there? I talked about breathing a bit. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? I've heard that could be a solution right there.
Breathing is important. Will certainly keep you from passing out when you're in front of your audience. You know what? It's the most relevant thing about breathing is not necessarily deep breathing, or you don't have to play these mind games with yourself in order to feel comfortable when you're getting up in front of the audience. Really just tune into what does the audience need to hear? What value do I need to deliver? And when it comes to the breathing, take a couple of good deep breaths well before you get up in front of your audience. Your heart will probably be beating in those 30 seconds right before you get up there. Just be conscious of it. Take your deep breaths before you get up on the stage, and be aware that as soon as your name is called and you're walking up to the front of the room, people are watching you. So don't breathe weirdly or don't have any grand exhales there, because you're on display as of the time your name is called.
You're listening to Life Unrehearsed. That's Suzanna Baum, public speaking trainer and coach and keynote speaker. Suzanna, Corrie, and I were both talking in preparing for this. There are some people that they're not going to speak. They're not going to do it. It's got them. And that it's not just public speaking, but it could help them out socially even. So we want to talk a little bit more about that in detail. But first, we're going to head to the CJD Traffic Center for a traffic update. Okay. He's supposed to do it off automatically, but he's new, so sometimes he doesn't do it.
Oh, I've been doing it off.
Okay, good. Sorry, I saw a bit of a blank face, so I cut in.
I was waiting. I wasn't sure about what time you were going to news.
Yeah, at 4:45. But before, I thought you were going to go to a question, and then there was that pause, so I jumped into a question.
So yeah, I probably should have done a question, but it was okay.
No problem. Okay, so do you want to come out of traffic then, Corrie?
I can.
You all right with that?
So
it's going to be a song.
And it's going to be a song. I'm going to come out of traffic and pick up the question. I love it. I love this is the whole concept of the I'm not good at it and all that, and the myths.
So you're going to do a quick introduction that this is Life Unrehearsed, Matt and Corrie with Suzanna, and then Matt talked about going out to traffic, and then you lead into that.
Can I add one thing, because I should have clarified? I said, when we were talking about the myths, we talked about speaking from the heart. A lot of people are going to have trouble with, like, what is she saying? Don't speak from the heart. So can I elaborate on that? That I'm not saying don't speak from the heart, but I'm saying that you need to prepare what you need to say, even from the heart, and put it back.
You can answer the I'm not good at it kind of thing, and then go into
segue into that. If you
want me to segue into that?
Okay. So when I'm not good at it, and you're hopefully going to give some solutions to that. And by the way, I want to clarify what I meant by extended answer there.
Okay. I don't want people to get mad at that, because I don't mean don't speak from the heart. I just when people don't prepare.
So you're going to talk about a particular technique about not wanting. You're going to help people say, no, okay, maybe I'll have a crack at this speaking, and it doesn't have to be public speaking in front of hundreds. It's sometimes just they're uncomfortable in a social environment, and wine and cheese, and they freeze up.
What was it, before the traffic?
So before traffic, we talked about how people hold themselves back, not just in public speaking. I would say just in general, because I think this could be a good exercise, a social exercise for everyone.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we're finishing it.
Okay, so 4:56. So at around 4:55 and a little bit, I'm going to be
I listen to 10 seconds, and but when my mic is on, they will hear me. You just jump in if something happens.
Anything else we need to talk about? Because we'll have a little bit of time.
You know what? I think. Let's see. Question number 4. People often ask, who do people use as the gold standard?
Yeah, I
for a
saw
speaker?
that, and that's
So
what I
you
should
It's sort
have
of a
said.
general interest.
Yeah, if we have the time, I'd rather the more
Yeah.
concrete things.
Sure. Okay.
You know, I think if we
Okay.
could get into if you really want to see good
Okay.
people,
Okay.
you know, if you want to say, if I didn't ask it, and you want to say, as part of this, if you want to see good examples,
Okay. So then another thing. Next steps. So let's say people want to go out and say, okay, I'm going to go do that as a shot. So
Okay,
what
that's
can they
very
do?
important.
Yeah.
So next step. So
Yeah.
I'll ask that question because
You
it'll
ask
be
that, okay,
after you're going to
Yeah.
go after traffic.
Yeah.
And then my follow-up will be next steps.
okay, next steps, and within the next steps, you can say, you know, and I will ask how to get in touch with you, but then as well, that these are good examples. But we never have enough time. I feel like we're always rushing.
We just got a text. Very interesting show. Great choice of topic.
Oh, great.
Good job. And that's just now. Public speaking.
Yeah.
Way to go, Susanna.
That's very good.
That's awesome.
There we go.
Okay then. Okay then. This is Life Unrehearsed. I'm Corrie Sirota with my co-host Matt Vecchio, and we're talking to Suzanna Baum. And right before the traffic report, we talked about how people hold themselves back. That fear of, I'm not good at it, I can't do it, I hate it. So can we please talk about how those beliefs really just drag us down?
The beliefs really do drag us down, and it's about the story that we keep telling ourselves. And what's really interesting is just last week I was having a conversation with someone, and she had said to me, what is it that you do again? Because she heard I was going to be on CJD. So she said, what is it that you do again? And I explained to her that I help people give better presentations. I'm a public speaking trainer. And she said, oh gosh, public speaking, well, God, I am just not good at that. I hate that. I need lots of help. And it just really triggered me and made me realize that this is a story that a lot of people tell themselves, that they are not good at public speaking, that they hate it, that no one would want to hear what they have to say, that they would make lots of mistakes. And I'm here to say that that's not true. And we can change the story that we tell ourselves, but it really starts with being mindful of the fact that we are convincing ourselves out of doing this. But in the process of doing that, we are not only depriving ourselves of the opportunities that can come and the positive outcomes that can come when you decide to step out in front of an audience or decide, and again, when I say audience, it's not always an audience of many people. Sometimes it's 2 or 3 people in front of you that you're just trying to have a better conversation with them. You're depriving them of what you have to bring, the value that you have based on your experience, your background, everything that you have, and you're depriving yourself at the same time of everything that you have to share.
I think that's such an important point, Susanna, because it's not just about speaking in front of 100 people. It's about that wine and cheese or that networking event, and you only have a few people, yet you're still a bit frozen. Okay, so now we've listened to you. We're ready to go. We've got the confidence, Susanna. What do I have to do in terms of next steps?
Okay, next steps. First, you have to make the decision to say yes. Yes, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to give this speech, this presentation. I'm going to go talk to that person. Second thing you have to do is really analyze. Again, as I mentioned before, it's the audience. Who are they? What do they need? What value can I bring to them? So again, push the emphasis on them so that you can take it away from yourself and your nerves and your self-talk story that might bring you down. Once you're ready to get into a speech, you have to look at the structure of a speech. We can say it's a very basic introduction, body, conclusion, but what does that really mean? In the introduction, you have to talk about what is the relevance? What are you talking about, and why is it relevant to the audience? The middle of the speech, let's say you take your 3 key points or 4 key points that really prove what it is that you're trying to say, and then your conclusion. What happens next? You know, finishing off a speech with "thank you" or "okay, that's it" it's very anticlimactic for the audience. And what's really great for the audience is to hear what happens next. If you do what it is that I am suggesting that you do in the speech, where will your life go from there? It's a little bit more inspirational, even if it's corporate, even if it's an informational presentation. Ending it with the what happens next, that future vision, is very inspirational for the audience.
This is so great because if anyone who knows me knows I am all about the now what factor. That's
Now what?
And you are helping us identify now what. So what would the next steps be for somebody who was interested in learning more?
Okay, so the first thing I would suggest is go ahead first and do a lot of research on the internet. There's tons of articles about how to be a great speaker. Now, don't spend too much time there because, again, too much information. If you're really serious about getting out there and giving it a shot, and you're willing to commit yourself, joining Toastmasters is a great organization where you meet weekly and you practice your speeches and you practice everything around public speaking. Hire yourself a coach as well. If I work with individuals who, a lot of them come to me because they have a particular presentation coming up and they really need to look like a superstar as they're giving it. So you can hire a coach if you need to get better really, really quickly. And also watch the great speakers out there. Go to TED.com or just check out the speeches that might inspire you. There are thousands and thousands of great examples out there.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Suzanna. How can people get a hold of you?
You can visit my website at SuzannaBaum.com. So that's SuzannaBaum.com. And all of my contact information is right there.
Well, that's great, Suzanna. Thank you so much for joining us. You talked about TED Talks, and there's a bunch of them out there. I'm going to put you on the spot. If you were to pick one or two, what would you say this is one everyone has to see?
Oh, Sir Ken Robinson. Why schools are killing creativity. That's one of, I actually think that's one of the highest viewed one on TED, and it's amazing because of the stories that he brings in, his humor, the way he structures this presentation with his key points, and he really leads you on this journey that leads you to this conclusion, a very, very inspiring conclusion that really involves you. He's a magnificent speaker, one of the best.
One more time, what's his name?
Sir Ken Robinson.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you, and thank you for joining us on Life Unrehearsed. We really appreciate your words of wisdom.
Thank you.
They will be put to good use, I guarantee it.
I hope so.
Well, thank you, everyone, for listening. You can catch us every Sunday at 4 o'clock, and next week we have a very interesting show lined up. We're going to have Phyllis Frost with us. She's a fitness expert, and she's going to have some ideas and thoughts as to what we should be doing as we head into the holiday season. So thank you again, and we're going to head into news shortly. Great.
Yeah, it was good.
Great. Very good. Very confident.
Thank you.
We get to say goodbye to Facebook.
Bye, Facebook.
Thanks for listening.
Can I get a picture with the
Yes.
microphone?
Sure.
Because it's fun.
Yes. Always good.